Hi, I want to talk a little bit about the January 6th commission or committee hearings there have been two of them so far. I've watched both of them in their entirety. And I think it's interesting. I did learn some new things I didn't know, but I've not been that surprised. I already kind of knew a lot of it, or suspected a lot of it. That Trump, obviously wanted to stay as president, even though he had been voted out of office, despite the lies he's told, since April of 2020. He set that up. He knew it didn't look good for him winning because of how he was handling COVID and, a lot of his racist diatribes against, particularly immigrants who have brown or black skin. Just some of the egregious things he's done, his misogyny. It's interesting to me. I remember the first time I ever heard of Donald Trump. I'm not from New York. I'm from Georgia. I didn't know who he was. And it was sometime maybe late 80s, early 90s. He was on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And I watched Oprah on a fairly regular basis. Back then, I stayed home with my children for about 5 years when they were very young. And so that was a show I usually watched if, I was able to, depending, on how the kids were that day. If you've stayed home with toddlers, sometimes things don't always go as planned. But if I had time, I would watch that show. And he was on her show. And she asked him, some question, and he responded. He was there, I think, with his first wife, whatever her name is. And within about a minute or two of his answer, I thought, man, there's something that's not right about this guy. Like, he's lying. I got the immediate impression that it was all a facade. Like he has a certain image he's created, that he's not a very authentic person. He's a very insincere person. I just really could tell, like, he's a liar. And I have a really good bullshit detector. When you are a product of an abusive mother and an abusive grandfather, you learn really early to detect that kind of thing in another person. That sort of bad seed, malevolent energy. Even you don't have to be in the room with them. You can tell. Like, there's just certain things that, get your radar perked up when those people speak. There's an insincerity to it. And I pegged it really quickly. And I was like, man, he's a con man, grifter, liar. I totally knew that. And I had never heard of him before. And, he did become more prominent like in the 90s and the early 2000s and famous for, I don't know, being famous. I never watched his show, The Apprentice. I generally don't like reality TV. I think it's ridiculous, so I don't watch it. And, I guess I knew in some part of my brain that he had a show, but I never watched it and I wasn't interested in it. But, I could never understand why he was famous, kind of like the Kardashians. Like, why are these people famous? Like, what do they do? Anyway, I just thought he was kind of a joke. He seems like really not a very bright man, not very charming. Like, there's nothing remotely redeeming. He has no redeeming qualities. And so I just thought he was sort of like, Sideshow Bob or something. That's kind of how I saw him. He's like just some ridiculous person that pops up in the media once in a while that I can just click through and move on. And then in 2015, we announced he was running for president, and that racist speech he gave. I was like, oh dear God, please, who would vote for him? Like, I assumed that because I could see what an idiot he was and what a horrible person he was, that everybody else could too. Boy, was I wrong. And so, I still, right up until the election in 2016, I thought he didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning, because I just didn't think there were enough people that were dumb enough to vote for him. And then when he won the Electoral College, mind you, he didn't win the popular vote. The Electoral College is anti-democratic, and it should have been done away with a long time ago, but I digress. I was really devastated and shocked. I mean, I like Hillary Clinton. I know a lot of people really, hate her, and a lot of it's just a smear job by the GOP for the last nearly 30 years, or right at 30 years. And most of the stuff that's thrown out about her has been thoroughly debunked, or, it's not nearly to the extreme that they, ramp it up to. I think she's a good person, and I think she really does care about the United States and wants to do the best job she can. I could be wrong, but I don't see her as an evil person. And I was shocked and devastated because I thought, oh my God, this idiot's going to be running the asylum. Like, he is really a dumb person. He doesn't know anything. He's never, even been like on the school board or a city councilman or a mayor. Like, to me, when you're going to go into politics, like, you need to cut your teeth in smaller local positions, in elections. You kind of need to learn the craft before you become, the star, if you will. So I've never been a fan of celebrities running for president, but I thought, we're in big trouble, and not only because he didn't really know anything about being president, but I felt like he's just such a malevolent person. He's really not a good person. And I think that you should have some measure of integrity if you're going to be president of the United States. And so I was very worried. I didn't think it was going to go well, but, this is what we got. And almost immediately, he was awful, like really horrible. But, you kind of become numb to it after a point, just because the daily assault of insults on Twitter and, word salad speeches that I don't know make no sense to me. You just kind of learn to move past it. But then when COVID hit in early 2020, and he really botched the response to COVID. I mean, really botched it. And consciously did so. Like, you could tell. Like, he wanted to will it away. There's something in his head that he thinks he has the ability to just will things to happen. He lives in a very odd sort of mental headspace that normal people don't live in. And I was very worried about, what was going to happen with this worldwide pandemic, and him, a complete and utter moron with absolutely no moral compass. And I mean, it played out about as bad as you can imagine. A lot of civil unrest. He never tries to be conciliatory. He always has to throw gas on the fire. It's always a dumpster fire with him. And in April, when he started talking about the only way he could lose is if the election was rigged, I'm like, oh, dear God, here we go. He is going to ramp this up until the election in November. Like, it's always something with him. He's got to have like a little tagline. So I knew we were in trouble. When he started doing that, I thought, when he started like dissing mail-in balloting, because that's the way a lot of people wanted to vote because of COVID. We didn't have a vaccine. I have some medical problems that I didn't need to be around other people because I could die. I had never voted by mail before, but I wanted to that year because I didn't want to die. And I knew when he started talking about how mail-in ballots are, like, on their face of it, or prima facie fraudulent, and how the only way he could lose is if the election was rigged. I thought, we are in for some bad shit, and we were. The little speech he gave, like at 2 a.m. in the morning on November 4th, before all the ballots were even counted. Like, he was getting behind then because they were beginning to count early voting ballots and mail-in ballots, because he had encouraged all his voters, to vote on election day. So it looked like he had a big lead. But when they started counting all the people who had voted early in the mail-in ballots, we began to see that Biden was emerging ahead. But instead of waiting until all that was finished, he just declared that it was all rigged, that he did win the election, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, here we go. And then when Biden was declared the winner a few days later, I knew he was going to probably challenge it in the courts and was going to be kind of a jerk about it. And then when he wouldn't allow the transition team to start, getting things ready, like, I knew something bad was coming. I don't think I envisioned either his coup plot with, Rudy Giuliani and his merry band of misfits, or the insurrection at the Capitol. I had no idea it would turn out like that. But I did think there may be some violence. I thought, I didn't know what it would look like. Looking back, hindsight, it's not that surprising that it turned out the way it did, given who he is, and given, that I've known for 30 years he was a lunatic and a con man. I guess the thing that has startled me the most is it seems like, these people that I know who are Trump supporters, whether they be family or friends, that I've loved most of or all of my life and thought were wonderful, lovely people, suddenly became people I didn't really know very well. And it's like, was that person always there and I was just too blind to see it? Are they really this person? It was like he gave a certain element of people who tend to be Republican permission to be their worst selves. And people that I knew and loved. And all of a sudden I'm like, how is this happening? How can these people that I know possibly fall for this? Like, I know them to not be dumb people. How does this happen? And was this person that's so nasty really there all along and I just didn't know? And I've been baffled by that. I don't understand it. I'm not saying that Democrat politicians are all perfect and all the time honest or never make mistakes. I'm not saying that. But I've never had a Democratic politician that made me feel like he is an evil person. Or even most Republican politicians. I don't agree with their policies, for sure. I've never voted Republican, and I never will. But, I mean, unless something drastic was to change. But honestly, Dick Cheney I thought was pretty evil. But I never really looked at the GOP as evil before. Or that the politicians were evil. I thought, I couldn't believe, that they didn't want people to have access to food or education. Those things used to baffle me. Or, the right to your own bodily autonomy. Those things baffle me. But I don't agree with them policy-wise. But I never really was afraid of them. And then suddenly it's like, these people are a little bit not right in the head. There's something not right there. And so I guess I just look at this, and I think that we've seen in real time the development of cults. A lot of times cults are, they're so secretive, you don't really see it in real time. Even when you may have a family member or a friend that gets involved with one, and you may see some evidence of it, it's not on display every day in the media, And we've watched perfectly, seemingly normal people become somebody we don't know, become people that would storm the Capitol over a lie that's easily disproven and has been numerous times, that Donald Trump's, the election was somehow stolen from him. And it doesn't matter how much evidence you give them, how many facts you throw at them, they just dig in their heels. What do you do with that? And I'm hoping the evidence that they're showing, even Trump's inner circle saying, this was nonsense, this was bullshit, that I'm hoping it'll have people snap out of it. At this point, that's all I can hope for. Because, man alive, this is just nutters. And he's continuing to do it. It's like he lives on another planet, and so do his cult members. I hear them say, well, Joe Biden didn't have rallies like Trump did. Well, number one, we were in the middle of a pandemic. Most of us didn't want to be in big crowds like that. And number two, I don't worship politicians like that. I don't even, even rock stars and movie stars, I just don't care about celebrity culture like that. There are actors I like because I think they're good actors, or bands or singers I like because I think they're good at what they do and I enjoy their work. But I don't worship them. They're just human beings that are in a profession that makes them very visible. That doesn't mean, they're any different than the rest of us. Many of us have very extraordinary talents. They're just not visible to the rest of the world because we're not on camera all the time. And so I don't generally worship people who are famous. And so I don't understand that mentality that you treat your candidate for president as a rock star. That doesn't make sense to me. But, I know there is a whole culture of celebrity here in the United States. I just don't buy into it. And I think it's kind of ridiculous. So I'm hoping that the January 6th committee hearings will make a difference, that it'll help deprogram some of these people and bring them back into the real world. and quit listening to that nonsense on Fox News and Newsmax and OANN and Breitbart and all the nutters out there lying to them. I mean, I don't think something like Fox News should be allowed to call itself news, because it's not. It's not news. It's propaganda. Like, why aren't they called Fox Propaganda for the GOP? I don't know. But I didn't always, have a problem with the GOP. I do now. I have a real problem with them. I think they're authoritarian, and I think they're fascists now. They want a one-party rule. They accuse us of that, but they're really good. Whatever they're doing, they're going to accuse Democrats of doing it. When we're not. But they just lie. They lie about so many things. About Democrats and liberals and progressives. And, they use terms like woke as code for people who are anti-racist, basically. As if being racist is somehow a great thing to be, and anti-racist is awful. Politically correct is another one that they've used. They can't use what they really want to call us, because then it reveals their racism. So they use words like politically correct or woke as an insult to those of us who are anti-racist and inclusive. In another 10 years, it'll be another term that they co-opt for their code to say, yeah, we're racist and you're anti-racist, but we're going to make you look like the bad guy. So anyway, let's hope the hearings make a difference, because if the GOP wins either the House or the Senate or both in the midterms, I have a really good feeling we won't be the United States by 2030, because Trump or whoever runs for president in 2024, there are no good candidates on the Republican side. They're all lunatics, in my opinion, at this point. And they've taken over so many legislatures in key states, or they've corrupted the electoral process now because of Donald Trump's lies, that it's very likely that a Republican candidate is going to win the presidency in 2024, unless Democrats come out to vote in such overwhelming numbers they can't. But if that happens, you mark my words, if we are still a country, it won't look anything remotely like the United States. But I have a feeling we'll fraction off into it won't be a united country anymore. And that's what I'm worried about. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Peace.